welcome to the All Things Safety podcast. I'm your host, Benita Mehta, Chief Editor of ISHN. I'm here today with Matt Matsui, CEO or COO at EcoOnline. We're talking about current and future trends in safety technology. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Benita. How are you?
Good. So let's get started. What safety tech capabilities are real world proven today versus the hype everyone hears? And where can AI most credibly augment safety professionals, lighten their load, improve their impact?
That's a great question. When I look at things that are proven today in the field, heavily used, those are things like mobile hazard near miss reporting, things like inspections and audits, incident investigations, a lot of centralized training systems that we can deploy at the point of risk, things that are pretty well known, things that go beyond EHS traditional capabilities like lone worker support and contractor permitting and tracking, crisis management. All these things are really well known and well proven. There are a number of things that are gaining prominence, though. Things to me that are connected to safety solutions. We believe firmly in this evolution from compliance to visibility to predictability, right? Really going from looking backwards and reporting on compliance to really being able to predict and improve safety and keep our workers safer. And there's a lot of things that are starting to happen in real time that we're starting to see a lot of uptake from different companies. Regarding AI, there's a lot that we've got in the market today. I think people are starting to adopt it in larger numbers, but it is definitely emerging. Where we see the biggest focus is on things that reduce repetitive administrative work, right? Things that help people be more efficient. Generating checklists. Some of our customers have told us, just creating a safety checklist using AI to drive that has helped cut down a 3-week task down to a 3-hour task. Doing investigative drafts, helping to proofread things. We do some great things with computer vision that really are making big differences in the environment today.
Great. And where do you see organizations still seeing serious risk slip through the cracks despite having established safety programs? And how do you think better technology can help close those gaps?
Yeah, that's something that we look at all the time. A lot of times, safety programs they can look really good and really strong on paper, but they're not making enough of an impact. And we think it really comes down to a few things. We do think there's some technology that can help close that gap. Um, we also think there are some different processes that we can use. So, for instance, instead of just audits and inspections, which most companies are doing today, um, when we identify something that's recurring and something that is definitely a known risk, creating safety campaigns and driving them more proactively onto our sites can make a big difference. It's a cultural shift from, hey, I'm going to go do an audit or I'm going to go do an inspection and then act on what I find. If I already know there's an issue, kind of maybe rooftop safety issues or falling from heights issues, I can actually create a checklist. I can push it to every one of my sites, and then I can track compliance. I can tell them, hey, you need to complete the checklist within 4 weeks, and you need to provide visual proof that things are done. This way, I'm not just identifying the problems, I'm actually ensuring that actions have been taken and that the environment is safer. So to me, it's a little bit more proactive. And we see companies that are implementing this getting much better results in actually making safer work environments.
Yeah, okay. So we always hear the word, connected worker safety. So what does that really mean in practice today? And what's the fastest way for organizations to drive adoption without overwhelming frontline teams?
Yeah, so from our perspective, a connected experience is really um, one experience, a unified single sign-on capability, and a consistent user experience. So it doesn't feel like you're navigating through multiple applications. The vendor then is kind of expected to be able to make sure that data flows freely across applications. So you get the information you need when you need it, in the way you need it, really. And we need to make sure all that comes together at the point of access, right? At the point of work. So you can't expect people out in the field to run around looking for data and copying and pasting things, right? That's just not the way it works. I can give you an example that we were just talking to a customer about earlier this week. If you think about acute climate risk, so maybe your ESG product tracks acute climate risk, and some of that might be storms, hurricanes, tornadoes that are predicted to hit certain regions in your organization. If I can incorporate that climate risk data into my EHS system, into my lone worker system, and into my crisis management system, I can identify job sites that maybe have to change the PPE that they're issuing. Maybe they need to change schedules. Maybe they need to shut down a site. Maybe they need to make sure that the people on that site are safe. And if you have a lone worker app, I can actually ping them and make sure that they check in proactively. And so I can start to string this information together in cross-application workflows that are transparent to the user. And so when we think about the connected experience, we think about a seamless experience where users don't have to think about what product they're in, right? And they don't have to think about how do I move data from one to another. All that's done for you. And it comes together in a way that a frontline worker can actually use it and actually use it to make a difference.
Yeah, I love the word seamless. I think that's what most people are looking for. So,
Absolutely.
um, as chemical exposure and compliance pressures rise, how can automation reduce administrative burdens while improving outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Chemical compliance is definitely getting harder. Regulations change. SDSs need updating. Inventories are shifting. But teams a lot of times are still stuck chasing documents and keeping records current. And our clients don't want the truth is they don't want to just be compliant. They want to be safer and they want to run a more sustainable business. So we have a tool to speed the ease and use of safety related to KOSH, the UK standard for control of substances and hazardous to health. But we have clients globally using this to go beyond chemical compliance and really change safety. It helps companies understand not just what chemicals are in use, but if they're used under proper conditions and processes. So they'll actually say, hey, you're using this chemical, but you're using it in 5-minute increments in a small enclosed room with no ventilation or windows, right? That to me is a lot more actionable. And it's not just, hey, you've got a dangerous chemical. We start to understand how it's being used and what safety concerns exist under those environments and how you can make things better.
Mhm. So, my last question is about looking ahead. So, if safety leaders can only prioritize a few technology investments for the next year, what should they focus on to have the biggest impact on risk reduction and resilience?
Yeah, to us, it's really about getting the basics right and really protecting the frontline worker. And if you're protecting the frontline worker, it's got to be mobile. It's got to be mobile first. And it's got to be easy to use when it's 2 o'clock in the morning on the side of a road in the dark and it's raining. So, simplicity. And it's always a funny thing. Some of our customers, half the organization want more data captured in the field. Other people are standing in the field and they don't want to provide more data. They need something simple and they need something kind of easy to operate under very challenging conditions. And so, we really think that that is the number one thing. Let's make it easy to use. Let's get it in the hands of our frontline workers. And let's not just think about compliance. Let's think about actually making safer environments for our workers. And then, obviously beyond traditional EHS systems and targeting high risk levers, by trying to understand where the bigger consequences are. So right now we're doing a lot of things around permit to work and control of work. And when you really think about workforces, they're getting a lot more temporary and transient. And so they don't have years of safety culture embedded in them a lot. So it's got to be a lot more intuitive. And we really have to find ways to extend our safety culture to contractors and subcontractors, not just our employees that we work with every day. And we also think a lot about lone workers because, it's funny. Some people think about what is a lone worker? It's somebody who works by themselves in a field in a remote spot. That's true on most days, but under earthquake conditions, office workers all of a sudden become a lone worker in an instant. And so we think a lot about how do we protect not just the traditional lone worker. How do we protect all of our employees when they suddenly become a lone worker? And how do we tie lone worker into typical crisis management, right? Because again, a lot of times lone workers and crisis go hand in hand. And we want to make sure that we've planned for it. We have emergency procedures identified and that we can execute in a moment's notice. And so a lot of those things, to us get down to the heart of what's really, really important for safety.
Yeah, definitely. I think some things can seem straightforward, but when you're in an emergency situation, it's obviously a great idea to have all these things already implemented and in place and planned out. So
That's right. That's right.
okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I think this is an interesting conversation to have, and I hope our listeners get a lot out of it.